to our class for today. We are going to take a topic in economics, which is going to be the introductory part of economics, the meaning and basic concepts in economics. What is the meaning? What are the basic concepts found in economics? In the course of our study today, we are going to discuss the meaning of economics. We are going to discuss nature and scope of economics, the importance of economics, and then why is economics said to be a science? Economics as a science. So we are going to cover this area in the course of our study. Now let us start off the class by trying to explain what economics is. Economists have different definitions by different scholars. Today we are going to discuss a number of definitions, and we will take one particular definition that most persons take to be the widely accepted definition of economics. So what is economics? As defined by Alfred Marshall. What did Alfred Marshall say about economics? He said that economics is defined as a study of mankind in the ordinary business. Study of mankind in the ordinary business. So to Alfred Marshall, economics has to do with business. Humans getting involved in business activities. That is how Alfred Marshall sees economics. Then another person, Adam Smith. How did Adam Smith, a scholar, see economics? He sees economy as an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nation. So to Adam Smith, he sees economics as a way of making wealth. A way of making wealth. That humans are involved in wealth creation. Humans are involved in wealth creation. So Adam Smith sees economics in the light of wealth creation. Now, we are taking another person who defined economics in the light of his own understanding, John Mill. How did John Mill see economics? He sees economics as a practical science of production and distribution of wealth. As a production and distribution of wealth. So, to John Mill, economics is centered on production. Economics is centered on distribution of wealth. So the process of production leads to the creation of wealth. This is how these scholars see economics. But now let us take a more generally accepted definition of economics, which is that defined by Professor Lord Luna C. Robinson. How did Robinson see economics? He sees economics as a human study. That economics is defined as a science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce mates, which have alternative uses. He sees economics as a subject that studies human behavior. He sees economics as a science. So, a science which study human behavior, which equally have to do with making use of the scarce resources to achieve one's ends. And then we will have alternative uses in choosing these scarce resources. And to economics, Robinson's definition seems to be widely accepted by most individuals. Why is it widely accepted? You see that he sees it as a science. He sees it as a study of human behavior. He sees it as a study which study ends. And he sees it as a study which equally study scarce means. And then making use of the alternative uses which we have. So he seems to define economics in a more broader sense. Now, having seen the meaning of economics by various individuals, which of course Lord Robinson's definition seems to be more widely accepted. It's because it is more broader in understanding and covers what economics tends to tailor itself towards. That is a definition that might be widely accepted. Though you can back up your definition with other scholars or other definition by other individuals, such as the one we defined by Smith, by Alfred Marshall, and by John Mill. Now, having discussed the definition, let us move further to the next one, nature and scope of economics. What is the nature and scope of economics? What is the scope that economics covers? Economics belongs to both the social science subjects and the science subjects. So it is seen as a social science. But in our last bullet points for today, we are going to see how economics is seen as a science. So it's seen as both a social science and as a science. It's seen as a social science because it covers subject areas like sociology, geography, agric, anthropology, and the other subjects that economics covers. That's it's an aspect it covers under the scope. Then, economics is regarded as a social science too because it studies human behavior. How do we mean that it studies human behavior? It tells us how humans behave towards price, rise in price, fall in price, how they make choices, make use of the scarce means. All of these are what economics covers. Now, for example, if price goes up, people tend to buy lower, as in the demanding power will not be as much as when price goes down. But when price is low, people tend to buy more. That is the nature of economics. Then number 2, it talks about how people achieve their wants, how people seems to choose from what they have and know what actually they want and make a decision on what they want. Then economics equally, it's an interaction between human and product, between humans and products, because it deals with price, it deals with commodities, it deals with production. That's another scope or another nature of economics. Now, economics as a social subject is also concerned with the study of firms, companies. In the course of our subjects, in the course of our studying this subject, we are going to see different forms of business. We'll talk about the sole proprietor, the partnership business, the limited liability company, and other forms of businesses that can exist in an economy or in a particular place. So these are the nature and what economics covers. Then we are equally going to talk about how goods can be provided, how we can have availability of goods for those who occupy a particular place to consume. So these are areas we are going to cover under the nature and scope of economics. And another thing is that it's time to address the issue of scarce commodity. It equally tends to address how we can make choices and use these choices to satisfy our desires. So this is the nature and scope of economics. What did it cover? Like I told you, it covers a wide area. It's like an integrated subject. It has to do with a little of sociology, anthropology, geography, and the rest of it. And it tends to study human behavior as regards the mind and supply. It equally helps us to understand how we can make decisions between wants and needs. It equally gives us the opportunity to use the scarce resources available to satisfy our individual needs. So these are areas we will cover. These are many other areas we'll cover in the nature and scope of economics. Having said that, why do we need economics? What are the importance of us studying economics? Economics as a subject is very wide. And since it is very wide, it profits us in one way or the other. So why do we need it? What is the importance of us studying economics? Number one reason is, one, it allocates resources. It allocates resources to humans. It helps us to allocate resources in various ways. Allocation of resources. Allocate resources. The study of economics enables the government to allocate scarce resources to various sectors of the economy. Resources in various sectors of the economy. So that is one area of why we need economics as a subject. Another area is development programs comes as a result of economics, because you know areas that we need to develop as a nation. Development. Another thing is it aids development. It encourages development because you know areas that are underdeveloped and areas that need to be developed. So in our course of studying economics, you will see how allocation can be allocated to provide developmental things to those who live in a particular country. That's another importance. It helps us to make decision making. Decision making is important because if you have a number of goods or a number of products to buy, and maybe they have under same brand, they have different products, it is now your duty to make decision as an individual which to buy out of these number of products that serve the same needs. So it helps to make decision, or it facilitates our decision making process. Now we'll move over to number 4, which is preparation of budgets. It helps in budgets. It helps in budgets. Economists help both individual, both organization, and both the government to make appropriate budgets, to know where funds are supposed to go to. And as individual, economists help us to make appropriate budgets in order to manage ourselves, our life, and our families. That's another importance of economics. Then what is another importance of studying economics? Another one is that it helps us in production. It helps in production. Economics help you to identify what to produce, how to produce, whom to produce it to. So it helps you to think more analytically the needs of the society. Who are the targeted individuals? How can this product be produced in order for these people to use it to solve their own problem? So it helps us in production process. That's another aspect that economics help us. Then we move on to another point that economics help us. It helps consumers. In the course of our study, we are going to see the channel of distribution. We'll see where consumers falls in. Consumers are helped to know which rights they have and what kind of products are they consuming. And consumers know how to make use of the little resources they have to buy what they need at a particular time. So it helps consumers to be able to make decision as it regards what they are to consume. That's another importance. Then we go to another importance, which is number 7 importance. The provision of tools, basic tools. Basic tools for analyzing the economy. As we go further in our study of economics, you see that economists have different tools that are used to study the economy and how these tools are used analytically to know when to make decision and how to interpret what is happening in the economy. So it serves as a basic tool for analyzing the economy and how the economy is functioning. That is another importance why we did economics. Then we have another one, which is government participation. Government puts rules and regulation to a kind of govern how production is being made, how business is being carried out. So we will talk about government regulation as it regards businesses in different formats. Economists will expose us to this regulation put in place by the government to help the business to function effectively, or to help business individuals to function effectively in the economy. So that's another area. And lastly on this, it helps us to know how to satisfy our wants. Among other things that we have, we're going to talk about the scale of preference. Among this scale we have, which is our most required need, our most required want, that again is what economists help us. So these are the importance, a number of importance we have here that economists help us to understand. So that is the importance of economics. Having seen the importance, why is economics regarded as a science? Remember I told you that economics is a science and equally a social science. It's a social science because it studies human behavior and it studies wants and it studies scarce resources. But then economics use basic tools to make decisions. They are more analytical, like in the sciences. Now let us see why we say economics it's a science. I'm going to wipe this off and we use a basic science way of analyzing things to see why we say economics it's a science. Now, we know that in sciences we use observation. We know that in sciences we use data. So let us try to itemize them here. We have 1, observation. We have 2, formulation of data. We have 3, formulating of hypothesis. Now let us use these tools we have here to see economics in the light of being a science. You know that in sciences, we do observation. So economists, we equally use observation to see how things are happening in the economy. Though, economics is seen as a science, but not a core science. That's why we regard it as both a social science and a science. Because it has a little element of social science, a little element of science. So we're going to take the element of science which it has, though not a core science, because human behaviors are not testable. Somebody behave in such a way today does not mean he's going to behave in such a way tomorrow. But in science, everything is constant. But in economics, they are not constant because they changes since they are dealing with humans. That's why we see it as not a core science. But let us see these tools and use it to see how we see economics as a science. If you see it in any of your questions, use this tool to analyze economics in the line of being a science. It uses observation. In science, we observe, and this observation helps us to get results. In economics, we use observation, and through this observation, we are able to get scientific results that will help us to test further things in sciences, which helps us to formulate hypotheses. From the observation we are able to formulate hypotheses. This hypothesis helps us to know what to accept and what not to accept, and that led to collection of data. And after collecting data, what do we need to do? We organize our data. The organization of these data helps us to know how we make analytical kind of solution to the data collected. Then after we have collected our data and we have analyzed, we come with laws we formulated from the data, because you formulate laws from the organization and analytical way you have done this. Then we move on. After formulating laws, you test to see how correct the hypothesis you've collected is. Now you subject it to testing, and after subjecting it to testing, you predict, you draw conclusion. The conclusion can be a kind of conclusion that gives you a positive result or a negative result. So this is why we say that economics is a science, because it can use all of this. Undermining the fact that it studies human behavior, we can subject it to this area. So in the course of our study, you are going to see how we make observation, how we draw, formulate hypotheses, collect data, organize and analyze them, see how we formulate laws from them, and then make our last conclusion from them all. So you see, this is the topic for today, the meaning and basic concept in economics. We've seen economics as a science. We've equally seen it as a social science. We've seen the importance, the nature and scope, and the meaning. So please go over your classes again and see how you can benefit from it. We have major revision questions from this question. So please master them and you will be glad. Thank you for coming to today's class. Until next class.